This plan is worth €9 billion in cost cutting over the next 3 years. A large part of that linked to a reduction in staff numbers. 6,000 jobs to go immediately. Another 15,000 staff are going to remain on furlough, so not at work and paid by the government. That's something the company is now negotiating with the Australian government to keep those payments coming for those staff. But 20% cut in the workforce for now, and that's because the airline is expecting to have much lower revenues for years to come, and the CEO saying that it has to prepare to be a smaller airline in the future. Situation we're seeing for airlines across the world because, of course, the collapse in passenger demand, they're worried about there not being people willing to fly in the coming months or years as well. On the more long-term, Qantas is planning to ground 100 of its planes, the majority of its fleet for a year or more. It is worth saying that Qantas is in a better position than many airlines because it does have a domestic business, which is a significant part of its revenues, and that business is already returning. Qantas saying that it's going to operate 40% of its domestic flights in July. So already that business is starting to return, but international flights all but zero really for Qantas for the moment. And they're saying they don't see international travel recover significantly until July 2021. So a really long way down the road. And that's, as Australian officials are saying, they're not planning on reopening international travel for most travellers until the end of the year.
Like you said, other airlines suffering, other airlines making painful cuts. Shareholders at Germany's Lufthansa are voting later today on a €9 billion government bailout.
Now, there was some debate over whether or not that deal actually might be rejected, but we did just last night have Lufthansa's main shareholder say that he will vote for it. So some of that relief for investors today. We've also had the European Union's competition authority coming out today and saying that it approves this €9 billion bailout from the German government, which will see the German government take a 20% stake in Lufthansa. Now, Lufthansa is, as part of that deal with the European Commission, going to have to give up some of its precious landing slots in Frankfurt and in Munich, so to make some space for fair competitions. There are some things that Lufthansa will have to give up for that money as well, but investors very pleased. Shares a short time ago in Lufthansa up by 15%. Talk still ongoing, though, over massive job cuts. Lufthansa's cutting 22,000 staff, around just over 15% of its workforce. So there's plenty still to be negotiated with unions there over that. There is a deal for cabin crew, but negotiations ongoing for other areas of the business as well. Long-term, Lufthansa says it's going to be cutting its fleet by 10% or more because it doesn't expect demand to return. And that's what we're hearing from the industry representative group, the IATA. They say it'll be 2 to 3 years before airline demand returns to what it was before the pandemic. Losses for airlines, they say, will be more than $84 billion this year. I was speaking to the head of the IATA last week, Alexandre de Gignac, saying that he thinks this is the bottom of the crisis for the airline industry if there's no second wave, but did admit there could be more airlines that'll go bust before this crisis is over.